Okay, we're back. Sorry about that. Like I said, major technical difficulties right now, and I think that this route will be a little bit better and go okay. So this is part two. So I also just want you guys to remember, like I know you all are struggling with trying to keep keep up with your classes and different technological features, and I am right there with you. This has been very difficult. Just as I was planning for everything to go smooth, it didn't. So here we are now. So we talked about prohibition. We left off on the video, although the video was cut short. It was just really tying in, once again, how prohibition was looking in America, how there was one side where people are getting rid of it and they're for prohibition and they're dumping out alcohol, and then you have other sides who didn't agree with that and they wanted to continue to drink, or they looked at this as an opportunity to make some money, a business opportunity perhaps, and so they went right on that. So essential question again, how did organized crime develop in the 1920s? Well, it started to develop from the Prohibition movement. That's the 18th Amendment, and then the Volstead Act is what put that in place to make prohibition legal. All right, guys. Next, here's the video. The link is available, and I will make sure that you all have access to it. Just if you want to watch and review. I don't want to try this again just because I think we've wasted a little bit of your time anyway, so we'll just move along. So a bootlegger, this is a term used to describe a supplier of illegal alcohol during Prohibition. So this is someone who helped with the manufacture or sale to ensure to get it to people. So some people operated stills. Now we remember how much I love vocab, right? So what is a still? I don't know. Here we go. A still is a device used to produce alcohol from corn, grain, potatoes, or other fruit and vegetable sources. So they came up with their own device and made alcohol themselves. So others would smuggle alcohol from Canada or by ship from the Caribbean. So we all know that Canada borders the United States. It's right above us. So they would smuggle it in. And then also the Caribbean, which is south of the eastern part of the United States, they would get it by ship from over there. And so when these shipments came in, or these people were smuggling things in, they had to do their best to try to make it as discreet as possible so that they wouldn't get caught. So for the ships, what they would do is the ship would anchor pretty far off the coast, where the cargo would be loaded onto small, fast speedboats. And these speedboats are fast enough to outrace any Coast Guard cutters that were out there trying to monitor what they were doing. So you have the big ships sitting out there, and then it almost reminds me of a movie, sneaking in and to get it over. Then the boats would head to secluded harbors where trucks were waiting to carry the liquor into warehouses. From there, then it would be transported to the retail outlets. So they had quite the operation set up. It was complex and it was successful. A little bit more about that. So they, how did they distributed their alcohol? A big way was through speakeasies. Does anyone have an idea what a speakeasy is? No, when I think, so I'm going to break down the word speak. Socializing, talking, that's what I kind of take from that. And then easy, it describes itself, something that's easy, it's not complex. And so maybe a social place where people, that's easy for them to get to. But the real definition is a bar that operated illegally during the time of Prohibition. So speakeasies were definitely secluded and hidden, and because they weren't able to legally operate. these speakeasies flourished in the cities. They were everywhere. This is probably due to a more dense area with a higher population of people than versus a rural area. And then also remember that people in the cities are generally a bit more progressive and not as traditional as the folks out in the rural areas. A lot of our temperance movement that we talked about, those people of religious sects and denominations generally lived out in those rural areas as well. And we even see that today. For instance, I'm from a really, really small community outside of Silverton. So Silverton's small enough, we're in Salem, we're in the state's capital, that we have bars and restaurants everywhere. But in my small community, where I grew up, there were many religious families, and they were large, and most of them did not drink, and most of them still to this day hold on to really traditional values and aren't as progressive. And this is in the way that they dress, this is in their family mentality, their work ethic, where they work, generally out on farms and whatnot. So we still see the difference even a little bit today. Back to speakeasies, there's usually a heavy gate that blocked the entrance, and the customer had to show a membership card or be recognized by a guard. So the heavy gate was so that not just anyone could get in there, because they wanted to make sure that they were protecting themselves from police officers and the law. And the customer, in order, that membership card showed that they were allowed to be in there, that they weren't going to snitch on them. If they didn't have that, if the guard recognized them, I think that'd be pretty acceptable as well. Often these places were disguised behind flower shops, restaurants, or even a fake telephone booth. From the outside, it looked like a normal area, that was maybe shut down or not operating at the time, or even a telephone booth. You go in and you see it, but then there's generally these secret hidden doors and compartments that make these up. You can see in here on the picture on the left, right over here, you have a man carrying something, and he's knocking on a door, and it looks like the door's got a lock, and then maybe a little area for someone to see who's out there. This picture on the right is a picture of a large speakeasy. Look at all the people are in there. You can see they're dressed up, they're dancing, they're having fun. These are generally what these speakeasies looked like. From the outside, it was nothing. It looked like that regular door or telephone booth, and then you open up and there's this whole new world in there. And so this is what people did to get by Prohibition, successful, and build their success. So there was a tremendous profit that resulted from the sale of illegal liquor to help lead the development of organized crime. So they were making money off this. They were opportunists. They said, hey, we know people still want alcohol, and if we give them an option to have it and they're able to consume it, we can be profitable out of this. A very complex organization involved, we talked about. Now, people for organized crime, they just weren't interested in the illegal sale of alcohol, but they often went into other activities as well. So these other illegal activities include gambling, which was illegal at the time, prostitution, racketeering. Does anyone know what racketeering means? It's kind of a big word, a fun word to say. But racketeering is when gangsters bribed police or other government officials to ignore their illegal operations. So, once again, when we talk about a complex organization involved, they were getting people on the inside that could get them in trouble to be on their side. So often these police officials, these police officers or other government officials would turn a blind eye or work with them and maybe pretend that they were getting in trouble or arresting them, putting them in their police car, only to turn and let them go. These organized crime, they also force local businesses to pay a fee for protection. So when we talk about protection, I think this is important because you have your local businesses, your police officers, your government officials. These were violent groups of people that were involved in organized crime. And so if you do what they say, then they're going to leave you alone and increase your safety, which is good. And that's hard to comprehend. If I'm a small business owner and I've got my family that I want to protect and I need people to buy things so that I can feed my family as well, I don't have a lot of power. So I can see how it's very easy to pay that fee for protection if you just let me live my daily life and do what I'm going to do. I just need to go to work, mind my own business. I'll pretend like you don't even exist as long as I still get my paycheck. You're not bullying me. You're not harming me or my customers or my family. And then I move on with my day. Now, there were often a lot of rival groups who fought for control in some cities. So these rival groups, they wanted all of the control because the more control they have, the more money they can make. Any business, the more profitable you are, the more successful. That's exactly what you want. So we're going to talk about one of the leaders of organized crime, who was Al Scarface, was his nickname, Capone. He was one of the most notorious criminals of this time during the 1920s. We hear his name still to this day. There's TV shows that made about him, movies, books, all sorts of stuff. He operated mainly in Chicago, and he earned $60 million per year from bootlegging. $60 million, that's a lot. In this day and age, that's a lot for me to even comprehend. I definitely probably won't be making even $1 million in my lifetime. But he was very, very good at what he did. If he had competitors, he'd get rid of them. He murdered them so that they weren't an issue and that he could continue to build his business. Now, he was arrested many times for a variety of things, but he was never found guilty. Why? Part of it was probably because he helped pay off police, politicians, judges. He had a whole group of people on his side. What finally sent him to jail and kept him there was at a point where he got arrested for tax evasion. And so he was sent to Alcatraz for that. For all the crime that he committed, saying that what they nail him on is tax evasion. Maybe that's one of the only things they felt like they could do. They could get him on without talking about how they were, dirty policemen or judges or government officials themselves. So this was Al Capone's mugshot. We can see right here. He doesn't seem stressed or worried. He definitely was a man who was in control. And then this was what his cell looked like at Alcatraz. So I just found this really interesting because I don't think a lot of criminals had quite the setup as he did. He's got a nice spot for some natural light to come in. Over here in this corner, he has a comfy chair with a lamp and then a little record player or a desk stand, it looks like. So he can sit in the corner, read his books. He's got his natural light. He's got a painting on the wall over here and over here, a painting or a mirror, helping it look like he is more at home. He's got his desk right here with his little cabinet, his bed, and then another desk, lamp, and chair. Even rugs. I guess if I were in his position, I look at the rugs, keep his feet warm, and really just bring a sense of home. So I think that his time in jail wasn't quite like the average Joe's time in jail, where they didn't get to bring their home furnishings and comforts. Next. So even though he got arrested, he still had some power there. So what happens with organized crime? What are the results of this? Gangsters ended up taking violence to the streets, and the American public became scared. That's because they saw a lot of violence, murder, things going on, and they became scared for themselves. It all of a sudden wasn't just a game between one competitor's family and the others, but they were scared for their own safety and livelihood. So the government got involved, and this is where the FBI was created, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. What do they say? It's all fun and games until someone gets hurt. So one of the biggest events that happened that really scared the American public and got the FBI involved was the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Now they talked about that a little bit in that video, but this was crazy. So what happened was there was a plan hatched by Al Capone, the guy who we just learned about, to kill his rival gang leader, George Bugsy Moran, and his gang. So Al Capone had his part of Chicago, but then here comes Bugsy Moran, and they're fighting over territory so they can keep their organization profitable. So what had happened was that there was a plan that a truck of bootlegged whiskey would arrive in a parking garage for Moran and his gang on February 14th, 1929. So remember, Prohibition went into effect in 1920, and so here we are 9 years later, and this is where we're at. So this truck is planning to park in the garage so that Bugsy Moran's gang can get their alcohol. And then 4 of Capone's men came in. 2 of them were dressed as police officers, as if they were busting this bootlegged whiskey coming in. What they did is they lined up all of Moran's men and shot all 7 of them. There was a picture in the video, I'm pretty sure we got to it, where you saw the men up against the wall with the hands behind their heads. And they probably weren't quite aware that this was Capone's men and his doing. So neighbors heard guns go off, and they went to investigate what's going on around here. And what they saw policemen come out with 2 other men with their hands in the air. And so the neighbors believed that everything was under control. Now, if you remember, 2 of Capone's men went and dressed as police officers, and the other 2 were just dressed as casual, everyday folk. So those 2 policemen dressed as the police officers, it looked like they were arresting the 2 other men that were actually on their side, Capone's men, so to give the public relief that they see, oh, okay, this is being taken care of. So then the police show up, and they see this too. So everyone's confused for a little bit as to what's going on, because Capone had staged it to look like everything was under control. So here is a picture of some of the men in the parking garage, all dead. These are all Bugsy Moran's gang. One of the chairs is knocked over. What is it? And then here's some of the real police, not Capone's police, taking some of the bodies out of that garage and taking them away. Now this made the news too. We can see right here the massacre of 7 of the Moran gang. It says the killing scene was too gruesome for onlookers. This scared people, especially when they realized that organized crime wasn't just about selling illegal alcohol, but it was actually hurting people around them, hurting innocent people, and I think that this was kind of a turning point where they said this isn't okay. Once again, we talk about the FBI getting involved, because it's one thing when you can't feel safe in your community. All right, so that's kind of where we're going to end for today. One thing that I want you to think about for your assignment is, if prohibition were implemented today, if something came out saying, hey, prohibition is going to go into effect, would you be for or against it? And tell me why. So I would like a full paragraph written, and there's no right or wrong answer to this. As an adult who's legal to drink, one side of me says, hey, that's not fair. I might want a beer with my barbecue once in a while. I pay my taxes and don't do illegal activities and go to work every day. But then the other side of me relates to, I also have a family that abuses alcohol, and sometimes that's scary. And for people like them, I think prohibition would be a good thing. So remember, there's always two sides to every story. But I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say about that, and we will pick up next time. Have a great day, okay?